Yes, I am, and thanks very much for this opportunity to speak. And also, it's an honor for me to be part of this really impressive group that are contributing to this issue. Um, as as an outsider, I'm looking at this situation. I think of it as a state of double oppression. Uh, it's been touched on already. The Palestinians are oppressed daily by Israel and by the PA. They have no expectation that their own government will protect them from Israeli violence. And many indeed see the PA as a co-conspirator with the Israelis in acts of violence. At the same time, they see their government committing similar acts of violence against them. And I know that Omar is going to be speaking, but I did want to quote from the Human Rights report, just briefly, Human Rights Watch report. The human rights record of the Palestinian Authority can be characterized by arbitrary detention without charge or trial, torture and ill treatment during interrogation, grossly unfair trials, and restrictions on freedom of expression and association. To anyone familiar with the Israeli occupation, that all sounds eerily familiar. And this too from Human Rights Watch and Lawyers for Justice. PA and Hamas security forces routinely taunt and threaten detainees, use solitary confinement and beatings, including whipping their feet, and force detainees into painful stress positions for prolonged periods, including hoisting their arms behind their backs with cables or rope to punish and intimidate critics and opponents and elicit confessions. Now, the PA and Hamas claim to investigate all these cases of abuse and hold wrongdoers to account. And in any event, they say such cases are isolated. That is a claim that would be laughable with a situation not so awful and so tragic. So I want to just briefly look at the enablers of these abuses. And I'll run through 6 of them. Number 1 is no election since 2006, and therefore no accountability and impunity, really, because of that situation. There is a lack of legal framework that clearly specifies duties and responsibilities of the executive, judicial, and legislative branches of government. For example, the chief executive has frequently stalled laws passed by the legislative branch, and the security services have often ignored court rulings, ordering them to release detainees. That's a situation that Uwe has already touched on. Western media, number 2, on those occasions when it does focus on systematic abuse of Palestinians, it focuses on Israeli abuses and abysmally ignores the abuses that the Palestinian Authority and indeed Hamas are carrying out. And of course, within Palestine, there's a lack of critical media. And I understand fully why that is, given the pressures and the arrests and the harassment of journalists. And I want to salute voices like Noor O'Day and others who are showing great courage in speaking out against the abuses. Number 3, outside Palestine, Palestinians in the diaspora and the supporters of the Palestinian cause, I think, fear they'll be seen as undermining the cause if they call out abuse by the PA loudly and clearly. It's a kind of self-editing process that kicks in. Number 4, Mahmoud Abbas, in place since 2006, he is the symbol of the dysfunction that affects governance in the West Bank, the corruption, the abuse, and the impunity with which the PA operates is all ensconced in this one individual. Number 5, of course, is the occupiers, Israel. Very happy with the state of play as it exists, very happy with working pretty directly with PA, and a very good point that everybody made about the security services of the West coordinating and cooperating. And finally, number 6, the Western governments who choose to ignore the human rights abuses committed by Israel, largely, and to totally ignore the abuses committed by the PA. And there was mention of Zahra Banat, and I think that's symptomatic of the deep malaise within Palestine. Beaten to death in prison in 2021, the Prime Minister commissioned a report that's not been made public. The guilty remain unindicted. And those who have protested and called for accountability have been charged with crimes that really are worthy of the Gulf states, Gulf state autocracies, crimes such as insulting higher authorities and inciting sectarian strife. All right, now, what to do about this? Again, I've got 6 suggestions. Number one is exactly what's happening today in this webinar, is to shine a light on this situation. Number 2, push hard for elections to take place by lobbying Western governments. Number 3, engage and challenge, I think, the Palestinian diaspora as much as possible to get them to speak out clearly about the abuses. Number 4, connect with elements of the ongoing Israeli protest movement who are calling for an end to occupation as part of the protests against the Netanyahu regime. I think that's an important point. There are people in Israel who are not only just simply protesting the so-called judicial reforms, but they're also doing it and calling for an end to occupation. Occupation is the root cause of much of the evil that has been inflicted upon the Palestinian people. And as I noted, the PA is a co-conspirator in that regime of abuse and tyranny. Number 5, enable more engagement with Palestinians in the West Bank, including human rights organizations. And I appreciate this is extremely tricky and difficult, particularly given that the Israelis have declared these organizations to be terrorist organizations. And finally, number 6, work with Israeli human rights organizations, even if only in an informal but collaborative manner. I keep banging away about common ground, and perhaps futilely and naively, but I do think it's important to seek out, search for, and connect in order to find common ground to deal with these very serious human rights abuses. Thank you.